Skull Rock Podcast is thrilled to announce that we are now on Patreon. Dive deeper into the world of animation, films, and behind-the-scenes stories with your hosts Aljon and Dave Bossert. Not only will you be helping to keep the magic alive, but will be part of our special community. We want to thank friend of the show, Joshua Volkert, as well as Skull Rock crew members, Steve Minch and Chris Banis, for their support. If you would like to join our Skull Rock crew, please visit our Patreon link in our show notes or visit patreon.com/Skull Rock Podcast. Thank you for listening and for your continued support of everything we do.
Hi, this is Kurt Hansen, story artist, writer, designer, art director, and you're listening to me on the Skull Rock Podcast.
Boom.
And they said he can't take direction.
You can. You can.
Aye, mateys. Remember this as the day you sailed with the Skull Rock Podcast. Proceed at your own risk and mark well me words, mateys. Dead men tell no tale.
Oh, that intro just brings a smile to my face. I love it. Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Every week we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, music, as well as what's streaming, what's in theaters, and what's going on in this multiverse of entertainment. I'm Aljon, musician and longtime Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, and pop culture fan, and you can email me, Aljon, A-L-J-O-N, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert, artist, filmmaker, author, and welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on our YouTube channel. You can also email me at dave@skullrockpodcast.com. Aljon,
hey,
how are you?
I'm good, Dave. It is springtime. It feels like spring. And I'm happy to be here. Happy to be alive, Dave.
Well, you know something, Aljon, I'm happy you're alive as well.
Thanks.
But, I'm glad it's spring. But, out here in Los Angeles, it generally goes from winter to summer.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the case last week because we had some days where it got up to 80, into the 80s. And I think even a day that touched 90.
Whoa.
And now we're back into the low 60s and it's raining.
Whoa. Well, yeah.
We're supposed to get rain this week. And out here in California, we always need rain.
Well, I tell you, yeah, absolutely. We had a little bit of a one day of like 75-degree weather, and then we're back to being cool again. And I suspect this is going to be a one more week of cool weather before we launch into summertime. That's usually the way it works here in Nashville. But, I'll enjoy the coolness while I can before it gets sweltering, because when that happens, all bets are off and everybody's just miserable because of the heat and humidity here in the
there you go.
In the Ohio Valley.
It's always about the humidity.
It is, for sure. We have an awesome part 2 lined up again. A lot of great feedback from Ted Thomas being on the show last week.
Absolutely. Ted's such a nice guy, and it's so great to see the notes from our listeners.
Absolutely. We're going to delve into that, as well as, we have some listener email and what we've been kind of watching and consuming this week. So I tell you, you've got, go ahead.
And, before we go into the emails, I just want to reiterate that on April 20th out here in Los Angeles, they're screening the Puppetoons movie at the Fine Arts Theater in Beverly Hills at 1 p.m. It's April 20th, 1 p.m. And get this, the tickets are a quarter, 25 cents. So, I'm going to make sure, Aljon, you got to put up the link on our show notes for this.
Yes, I'll remember to do that.
Because people can just click through on the link, reserve your seats. That's right, reserve seats, and it's going to cost you 25 cents. I think last week I said the 100th anniversary. It's really the 80th anniversary of the Fine Arts Theater in Beverly Hills.
Right.
But they're going back to 80. They're going back 80 years to what ticket prices were.
Nice.
25 cents. So you can't beat that. You get to see these beautifully restored George Powell Puppetoons. And you get to see it in a beautiful movie theater.
Nice. I love the setting, and why not experience the awesome content with the rollback prices, right? I mean, that's the best deal in the world right there.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be there. I just enjoy seeing those films from that era on a big screen. You don't get to see them that often. So if you're in Los Angeles, April 20th, Puppetoon movie at the Fine Arts Theater on Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills, you can get your tickets for a quarter, and you're reserving your seats, which is unbelievable. I
love it. I've got the Facebook link here as well. So we'll go ahead and link to that. What an awesome event. I love the fact that we're able to experience that, in person in a theater, where it should be displayed. So
absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, having said that, now it's time.
Skull Rock Podcast answers your email.
Always great to have listener feedback, Dave.
Yeah, we got an email from Steve, one of our listeners. He said, Dave and Aljon, hope you're doing well. I listened to the first episode with Ted Thomas today on my morning walk. And when he mentioned they lived next to Ollie and that they celebrated birthdays together, it made me think of this gem I stumbled on one year at the CTN Expo I attended. In one of the bins of a vendor selling animation art and cells, I found this beautiful Eric Goldberg sketch I thought you guys would enjoy seeing. Take care. And that was from Steve, who I don't know where Steve is from. Come on, folks. Tell us where you're from. We just want to know. Yeah, parts unknown.
He's part of the Skull Rock crew, Steve mentioned.
I know, really. So, but the image that he sent us was a drawing by Eric Goldberg of the genie sitting at an animation desk, saying that it's hard doing animation. Magic is easy, but the doing animation was hard. And wishing Frank and Ollie happy birthdays.
I love it. We have another one, don't we?
Yeah, we got one. This is from Jim in Los Angeles. He says, hi, Dave. Sorry to write again. I was just listening to the latest podcast with the great Ted Thomas. Thank you for continuing to document and celebrate Disney history. And he goes on to say, and I don't want to read the whole thing, but he just basically says, I just wanted to chime in on Snow White. I saw it on the recommendation of a friend and have to say I really enjoyed it. Count me among those who think none of the Disney animated films should be remade. But as a Disney fan, I find myself returning to them out of an obligation to see most of the Disney movies. To me, Snow White honored the original by trying not to recreate it. It paid homage to the original while creating something mostly different with a wonderful new score and a cast that can actually sing the songs. Should it have been made? No. But it was, and it turned out to be delightful. So you know what? He goes on to talk about his experience of seeing it an evening screening, and he said. He said, like Treasure Planet and Atlantis the Lost Empire, it's unfortunate the movie's marketing didn't manage to sell the movie. Instead, serving to turn people off. I count it with Alice in Wonderland, Sleeping Beauty, Pollyanna, Newsies, The Emperor's New Groove, Treasure Planet, Brother Bear, and John Carter as movies that deserved a bigger audience on its initial release.
Wow.
So there you go, Jim. I'm glad, look, the thing about going to the movies, Aljon and our listeners, is, some movies people are going to love, and some movies, the same movies people are going to not like. I respect Jim's opinion here. He enjoyed the movie, and good on it.
Yeah.
I've always said about the remakes, Aljon, even though I don't necessarily agree that they need to remake every one of them. But I do agree that what Disney does is they're giving the audience a choice. You can see the original animated film. You can see a live action remake. You can see a stage show. You can see, the abridged version at the park, a show at the parks. So they're giving the audiences a choice here. So there you have it. Thanks, Jim from Los Angeles. We appreciate your email. We got another one here too. And we don't know where this person is from.
Yes.
Do we?
I don't think so, but
No.
It's Paul Vievos Christoforos. And I hope I said that right.
That is a name. Dear Dave and Aljon, today I've enjoyed my 4 consecutive screenings of The Day the Earth Blew Up, the Looney Tunes movie, going for a 5th at the time of this writing. I just want to say that I'm stumbling here. I just want to say that these greatest younger guys have done it again, including great legendary veterans like Dan Haskett, who's still with us, and the late Robert L. McKnight II. I wish to give kudos to all those guys and girls who helped bring this great animated comedy, especially guys like Eric Bowser, Candy Milo, and Steven DiStefano, and more. But Warner's removing all their great Golden Age Looney Tunes. No, this can't be right. It has single-handedly brought out fascination with these greatest characters in history to the screening halt. Therefore, something must be done. Do you think a petition would be necessary? Please let me know in an upcoming episode, and thanks. Well, here we go. Here's another person, Aljon, who went to see The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, which I've said here. I've seen it. I think it's a very good movie. Last week, one of our listeners, Erica, said she saw it a couple of times. She really enjoyed it. I think it's a fabulous film, and I hope more people go out and see it in the theater. As far as doing a petition, you know what? I kind of feel like those things are almost a waste of time.
Yeah.
Don't you, Aljon?
I do. I mean, I think
the heart is there. People mean well by doing them, but I just don't think it's going to carry any weight.
No, and I think there are a lot of other mitigating circumstances, whether it's licensing or royalty payments. There's a lot of things that we don't necessarily know, but I can only guess, because it always boils down to money when it comes to streaming rights and royalty rates. And right now, I think Warner Brothers is not making a lot of money. Movie studios aren't making money, guys. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yeah, but you know something? I think those early, like 30s, 40s Warner Brothers cartoons are owned outright, I would believe.
I would think.
By Warner Brothers, but who knows? I don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't know what the thinking is behind it. But to take those off of their platform just seems like a mistake to me.
It is.
But anyway, thanks for writing us. We do appreciate it, and we do try to read everybody's mails when they come on. When they send them. So please keep the comments coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, send us those emails or leave us a comment on our Skull Rock voicemail. The link is in our show notes, and we'd love to hear from you for sure. All right, Dave, what have we been watching this week?
Well, Aljon, I did go to the movies. I managed to go to the movies this week.
Oh.
And I saw A Working Man.
Oh, okay.
This is a new Jason Statham movie.
Looks interesting.
Well, let me tell you. Okay? Let me just tell you.
Yeah.
This is a typical Jason Statham movie.
Okay.
He plays a great anti-hero. He's a working man. The premise is he's working as a construction foreman for the Garcia family construction company. and he's just trying to live his life. You know, he's a former British soldier who's just trying to live his life. And the Garcia's daughter gets kidnapped into a human trafficking situation by people associated with the Russian mob in Chicago. And the parents come to Jason Statham's character, Levon Cade, and they plead with him to do something. And he initially refuses because that was a past life for him. But then he realizes he told this girl he'd always have her back, right? And and then it goes from there. It's like the body count just keeps ticking up, right?
As it does.
So the synopsis for this is Levon Cade left behind a decorated military career in the Black Ops to live a simple life of working construction. However, when human traffickers kidnap his boss's daughter, his search to bring her home uncovers a world of corruption far greater than he ever could have imagined. Oh. Now, this is directed by David Ayer. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And you may, he did The Beekeeper with Jason Statham. He did Suicide Squad. He did Fury, The Tax Collector. I mean, this guy I think is a good filmmaker, The screenplay is written by Sylvester Stallone and David Ayer.
Wow.
And Sylvester Stallone is one of the producers.
Wow, how about
right?
that?
And so this is from Amazon MGM Studios, it's based on a book called Levon's Trade by Chuck Dixon, and it's got a terrific cast. David Harbour's in this.
Wow.
He plays Gunny Lefty, Lefferty, Michael Pena is in this film. So it's got a really terrific cast. Look, Rotten Tomatoes gives it 52%. IMDb gives it 6.1%. But get this, 94% of the people who have seen it like this movie.
Wow.
Right?
Well, that would make sense.
And I went to see this with a friend, and he was like, this is okay. It's not a good movie. Not a great movie. And I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. This is what going to the movies is about during the summers, the spring and summer when they put out these are the popcorn movies, you know what I mean? It's like all the bad guys get killed off.
Yeah.
In very creative ways.
I was going to say, is it satisfying?
And you sit there eating your popcorn and you're smiling. You're like, great, get the bad guys, You're rooting for them,
Nice.
And so for me, I enjoyed this movie, and I generally enjoy Jason Statham films. Even though they're formulaic and you kind of know what's going to happen, it's still put any expectations out of your mind and just sit back and enjoy the movie and watch the bodies pile up,
Yes, I love it. That's what it's all about.
So there you have A Working Man.
Nice.
Now, on the smaller screen, I highly recommend The Residence. Have you heard about this?
No.
The Residence is on Netflix.
Okay.
And it's Cordelia Cupp, an eccentric detective, arrives at the White House in order to solve a murder which happens during a state dinner. And the murder happens in the residence of the White House, right?
Okay.
Where the first family would be living.
Gotcha.
Right? Cordelia Cupp is played by Uzu Aduba, who is absolutely fantastic.
Oh,
I mean, really fantastic. Now, she's not only fantastic, but Giancarlo Esposito is in this.
Wow.
And I'm not going to give away really any, I don't want to spoil this because this is one of the best limited series that I've seen in a long time. And I really, Bronson Pinochet. You know who that is?
Oh.
Bronson.
Well, I know Bronson
Pinchot.
Pinchot. Yeah.
Pinchot.
Yeah, he's been on like Perfect Strangers. He's
that he's in it. Randall Park is in it.
Oh, okay.
So this is a terrific sort of whodunit, and it's got a great cast. Rotten Tomatoes gives it 86%. IMDb gives it 7.9%. 87% of people who watched it like this show. I give it 2 thumbs up. I have to tell you, I think it's a fantastic limited series, and I highly recommend people watch this. This is bingeable, I will say.
Wow. Cool.
And the Residence is based on the residence inside the private world of the White House by Kate Anderson Brewer. So
interesting.
It was created by Paul William Davies, and it's a mystery comedy drama, right? That's where it falls.
Wow.
There's some funny moments. I can't recommend this highly enough. Nancy and I enjoyed this thoroughly. And Uzu Aduba, who plays Cordelia Kopp, the lead, consulting detective, she's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I want to see. I'm hoping Netflix picks this up, and because she's a consulting detective, they could drop her in anywhere in the world.
That's cool. What a cool character.
I hope they do that. Now,
nice.
Over on Prime, I finished watching season 3 of Reacher.
Okay. Yeah.
This is based on the Jack Reacher novel series by Lee Childs.
Right.
It's just, I have to say, and I don't say this very often, I feel like Reacher has gotten better each season, and season 3 is outstanding.
Good.
And be aware there's a high body count, which I'm happy about.
It looks brutal. It looks brutal on the trailers.
It gets an 8 out of 10 on Prime Video, an 8 out of 10 on IMDb, and 90% of the people who watched it like it. I thoroughly enjoyed season 3, so watch that. Now, over on HBO Max, or the Max streaming service, is a show called The Pit, a realistic examination of the challenges facing healthcare workers in America as seen through the lens of the frontline heroes working in a modern-day hospital in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the lead is Noah Weil, well-known actor. Noah Weil plays Dr. Michael Robbie, and it's got a fantastic ensemble cast, really incredible, very, very realistic portrayal of what goes on in emergency rooms in city hospitals. It's a terrific show. This is really a must-see. If you've got Max, you should really try and check this out. You can also catch it on Hulu. It's streaming on Max, on Hulu for premium subscribers, and also you'll be able to watch it on Amazon Prime as well. 8.7 out of 10 on IMDb, 96% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is really a great show. It's a gritty, realistic portrayal of what goes on in some of these city emergency rooms, and highly recommend this. So that's it for me, Aljon. What have you been watching, my friend?
Well, not only have I been continuing down the 80s hair metal path, I don't particularly think it's offensive to call it hair metal, although a lot of people feel like these kind of genre names like hair metal or yacht rock are extremely offensive, as we've discussed in the past, as we talk about the yacht rock documentary. Whatever. I was part of a 2000s kind of pop punk scene with my band, and I don't know. I don't really have anything derogatory for those type of bands. I wasn't like playing in a Nickelback band. You know what we call like 2000s bands, Dave, that played that kind of Nickelback and kind of music? We called them butt rock. Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah, this is that is the second time I've heard the term butt rock, because one of the morning DJ. Well, he's part of the. I listen to the Woody Show out here in Los Angeles, and I know they're on in a lot of markets across the country. But I listen to the morning show, and one of their personalities on the show mentioned that term butt rock. I've never heard that before. Butt rock.
Yeah, butt rock. I don't know where it came from. I really don't. But bands like Creed and Nickelback that came out in the 2000s, Saliva and all that, those bands came out in the 2000s. They call it butt rock. And if you follow me, you know that I will play the occasional emo or butt rock tribute playing those same bands. And they're wildly popular again. But I just continue to go down that rabbit hole of 80s rock. So Sean Kelly's book, I'm still going through it. It's called Don't Call It Hair Metal on Audible. It's a great book from a true fan. And not only is Sean Kelly a great writer, but, he lived it too. He was a guitar player for I believe he was a guitar player for Ace Frehley for a while when he did his solo stuff. So go out there and check it out if you can. The other things I wanted to mention, Dave, I finally saw Mufasa.
Okay. What did you think?
It's good. I mean, I like, the story is good. And it's interesting because I saw it with the kids. And they're like, is Simba in it? And it's like, yes, it's telling a story. So there is familiarity talking about Mufasa growing up and the people that surrounded how he got into power and the struggles that he had. So all the story beats are there, from the tragic, Disney losing the parents and trying to struggle to find itself. It's basically a retread of The Lion King. Right. I mean,
right. And what did you think of the animation?
I thought it was good.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't think it was bad. I mean, it's on par with The Lion King, the remake. Good. I mean, I thought it was very good. I mean, look, to bring about photorealistic characters in what is clearly, when people call this live action, of course it's not. I mean, it's all animated. This is an animated film. It's just the realistic style of computer CGI. And I found it completely fine. I mean, I'm not sitting here watching for the National Geographic of it all, although it looks amazing. At least I think it does from a fan standpoint. But just good. So you know, Mufasa, a cub lost and alone, meets a sympathetic lion named Taka, the heir to the royal bloodline, and the chance meeting sets in motion the expansive journey of a group of misfits searching for their destiny. And so my kids are like, where's Scar? Where's Scar? And I said, he's here. He's here. You'll just have to wait. And of course, the big twist, right? With Taka and Scar and all that stuff. So, I mean, I thought it was good. It's good. You're going to be hard pressed to find the original. And I don't really know if the story of Mufasa is as impactful as a sequel to The Lion King, to be quite honest. But the cast was all there and it was great. I will also say that Daredevil Born Again, my watching continues, and I will say, wow, this series continues to deliver on jaw-dropping moments and brutality, but wrapped around great character development. The music, the vibe, everything about it is great. You get lost in the fact that this is a comic book brought to life. It's completely riveting in my opinion, and there's nothing like the chemistry between Charlie Cox, who plays Daredevil, and Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays Wilson Fisk. The two of them are magic together. I love it.
Yeah, and Aljon, I watched the first 2 episodes of this, and I really enjoyed it. I haven't talked about it yet. I was going to put it on a future list, but I think you're spot on with your review. And Vincent D'Onofrio is terrific. We don't get to see enough of him in other things. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see him more. I think he's a really great actor.
I do too. I liked him a lot in Law and Order when he was in his Law and Order show. I thought he was just a very captivating character. When he's on screen, he just commands it. I don't know what it is. You can see the wheels kind of moving. You can see the gears moving in his acting and his expressions. And I think he captures the essence of Wilson Fisk. Now, he's trimmed down for the role. He's not wearing like a padded suit. A lot of people look at the character of Kingpin and you see the big mafia boss that he is in comic books. And I think his portrayal is very realistic. And I really like the direction of this series. And I like how it's very street level. The Avengers are wonderful in a very cosmic way. They handle amazing cosmic threats and that's exactly what the Avengers do. But when it comes to street level criminal activity and realism, you can't beat Daredevil and things like The Punisher and stuff like that. So I'm glad that they're carrying on the tradition from the Netflix show and expanding on the characters that we know and love. So
what wasn't he in? He was in Mystic Pizza in 1988. I think one of his early roles. Mm-hmm. He's just been really terrific in whatever he's in. He was in Full Metal Jacket, Jurassic World, Death Wish, the 2018 remake of Death Wish.
Yeah.
He's been in some incredible films.
He chooses great projects. I have to tell you.
He really does. And, I enjoy him. I enjoy watching him as an actor. So
I enjoy him like I enjoy Giancarlo Esposito and everything he does. They choose great roles. Yep. So kudos to them. Hey, gang, if you're interested in letting us know what you're watching and what your thoughts on what we're watching even, feel free to send us a note and an email and we'll read it in a future episode.
Skull Rock Podcast. This week in Disney and pop culture.
Dave, I'm so proud of myself. I'm a 10 out of 10 in terms of hitting buttons today on the show.
Excellent.
People are like, wow, Aljon must have labeled the buttons. But I tell you what's hitting on all cylinders is Marvel. We make fun of Marvel a little bit, and they made fun of themselves in a movie, Deadpool and Wolverine. You're coming in at a little bit of a low point, Wolverine. But they seem to be doing great success in social media right now. Did you happen to see the Doomsday, the Marvel Avengers Doomsday thing that they did announcing all the cast members?
I only saw some clips and still images from the announcement because it was a big announcement. But tell our listeners what they did.
So if you checked out social media this week, you'll notice that Marvel Studios had a teaser that says "Take a seat," and from there, over the next 4 hours, they were literally placing the little directors' chairs and actors' chairs with their names emblazoned on the back, and they just sat them down one at a time, announcing the cast of Avengers Doomsday, the biggest online event to date. This 5+ hour social media live stream video panned to a new director's chair with the actor's name every 10 to 15 minutes. And during that time, the stream received 275 million digital views and 3.1 million social mentions, including myself. I did that too. I reposted it. With the audience growing each hour, the number grew to more than 5 times the social volume of Deadpool and Wolverine Super Bowl trailer from last year. It made it Marvel's #1 biggest live stream, bigger than any red carpet premiere, according to Deadline. And that's huge, Dave.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, the audience anticipation is palpable. So here are the actors revealed for the film. Chris Hemsworth returns as Thor. Vanessa Kirby, will be reprising her role as Sue Storm from the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Sam, Captain America and Winter Soldier both. Letitia Wright as Shuri from Black Panther. Paul Rudd, Ant-Man. Wyatt Russell from U.S. Agent. Tino Huerta Meja from Namor from Black Panther. Ebon Moss, Bacharach, Ben Grimm. I mean, the list goes on and on. Simu Liu, Shang-Chi. We have the rest, the original X-Men. Kelsey Grammer's in there, along with, let's see here, Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler, Rebecca Romaine, James Marsden as Cyclops, Channing Tatum from Deadpool and Wolverine reprises his role as Gambit, Pedro Pascal, Mr. Fantastic, and of course Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom. And there's a score more. All the Thunderbolts are in there. Florence Pugh's in there. David Harbour, Red Guardian. I mean,
Aljon, do you think this is just too much all in one movie?
I don't. I'm like, bring it on, because, you know,
there's so many big personalities in there. I mean, you know,
they might get a 2 minutes of screen time, Dave. And you know what? I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, I think the expectation from fans is if you built a shared universe with all of these great actors playing a role, and they're fighting against each other or help prevent a catastrophe among different parts of the galaxy and the universe in their own section of a multiverse, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be grand. I think this is the expectation of the fans. It's the expectation of the people that read the source material, like myself, that want to see all the toys come in one big sandbox and play with them all.
Okay.
And Tom Hiddleston's coming back too, which made my wife super excited because she's a big Tom Hiddleston fan. But anyway,
how do you feel about that, Aljon?
I feel great. I feel great. Thanks, man. Yeah, I feel the way you feel about Jason Statham movies. They're fun. It's popcorn. It's fun. So once again, check out next year. Doomsday is going to be in theaters this time next year, May 1st of 2026, followed by Secret Wars, May of 2027.
Wow.
All right, Dave. So speaking of box office, it's clearly upset. The blue-collar drama Working Man, as you say, declares victory over Snow White. Of course, we saw it happening. Disney isn't standing down just yet. It says the race is too early to call, even if the troubled movie is falling off a steep 65% or more in its second outing. Dave, you talked about this last week with your discussion of Snow White. You know, the list keeps on growing in terms of social media gaffes that Rachel Ziegler's doing. I mean, the bleeding continues.
Yeah, you know, I honestly just cannot understand the thinking that some of these actors do when they start putting stuff out on social media that just creates controversy. What they should be doing is they should be supporting their movie. They shouldn't be, you know, doing things that are going to just create a headache for the studio.
Wouldn't you want to, I mean, any future project's going to be tainted knowing the fact that, that you're a liability, that you could say something to take away from the returns of the movie that all these people invested on, these producers, the studio, you know, everybody has so much wrapped up. And it's like, why don't you just say nice things to help get people to the theater instead of, you know, doing a stream from an empty theater and blaming people?
She's being divisive.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's crazy.
I mean, and Gal Gadot, I mean, she's like a sweetheart for so many people, and then you're going to ruin her career too by making her movie that she's involved with you, and she puts on a very, brave face and tries to do promotions, and it's like, why are you taking away from all these talented people that worked on this film? I don't know. It's bizarre to me.
You know, I honestly think it's crazy that a Working Man is going to take the box office for the and that the take it away from a film like, a Disney film out in the theaters. It seems crazy, but again, there's just been so much controversy around Snow White. And listen, we heard from one of our listeners saying that he went to see it and enjoyed it. Yeah. I mean, listen, When Rachel Ziegler or anyone else involved in that film is out there putting stuff out on social media that's getting people pissed off, to what end? You know?
Yeah, you're not. I mean, as my parents always told me, you attract more flies with honey, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, she certainly. I wonder how much damage she's doing to her career.
Well, like I said, I think she's liability. I think anyone that would employ her, happens to know like this is how she is. So you take it.
And by the way, every time she does do something on social media, a day or two later, she has to go back in and apologize. I mean,
sorry, not sorry.
How moronic is that?
Yeah, well, sorry, not sorry, right? I mean, you've already put it out there. Clearly, you're not sorry about it if you keep on making the same mistake
because
over.
A day or two later, that's after, the studios come and ripped you a new one and says you got to apologize for that. You know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah, she's not apologetic about it. She just seems like a spoiled, entitled actor. So, well, here we go. In a warning sign for Hollywood, younger consumers are choosing creator content over premium TV and movies. This comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter. And this is a new Deloitte study that shows that Gen Zers are choosing social and creator-driven content over big-budget entertainment as consumers overall feel a price pinch over streaming. I think that's why YouTube is such a powerful tool right now for people, Dave.
Yeah, I read this article. This is Deloitte, which is a big accounting firm, does this study annually, and I thought this was a very interesting article that Gen Zs are essentially more interested in creator content online, and I think part of it has to do with the fact that there's a sincerity to it. There's an authenticity to that online content. Sometimes it's, really not super polished, but it's entertaining and people are enjoying it, and to me, again, I think that you'll see Hollywood try and grab at some of the top influencers or content creators that are making these things and try and capitalize on it. But what they'll wind up doing is killing it, because they wind up meddling in it and, making the content creators, bend their way.
Disney did that already.
Yes.
And Disney did that, maybe 15 years ago when I used to attend the social media conferences that, there was a time, Dave, that I was part of a creator community. And I hosted a lot of content on our own channel for Gibson prior to, the new regime taking over. But I used to do these conferences all the time. And Disney had bought new rock stars, I think. And they still create content. I believe that Disney still has a part in financing that. I'm not really sure how hands-on they are with that. But the content creators that they do have, I mean, a lot of those networks kind of disbanded and went their own way. Because I think people, as you said, Dave, they're more interested in the authenticity of a particular publisher or content creator. They have a particular point of view. I know that when you do YouTube Academy, when you're as a content creator, that they oftentimes will tell you like, this is kind of the new trend that's going on, less polish, more authenticity, show more of yourself and more people will glom onto you. And that's how the algorithm works. And I find myself on YouTube a lot more than a lot of other streaming content because I feel like after a while, the content that resonates with you, those personalities stay with you. And you just
look, Aljon, I just look at it from the standpoint that, look, the way we're doing the Skull Rock podcast, we're not beholden to anybody.
No.
We tell it like it is. And I think our audience appreciates that.
Yeah.
If we like something, we tell you we like it. Even if, the critics have panned it. but we watch a variety of things, and we like things. We don't like things. We give things a chance. We tell our listeners exactly what we think about stuff, and you either agree or disagree, but at least we're authentic about it.
Yeah.
And there's nobody whispering in our ear saying, "Oh, you can't say that," or "Hey, pump this up for us because we got a lot riding on it." No, we're not going to do that. We're not selling out. We're doing this show because we love doing this show, and apparently a lot of people love listening to this show.
It goes back to, and you're right, Dave, it goes back to that comment that we had, months ago, a couple quarters ago, what have you, of saying, maybe you could do this and steer yourself in the right direction and not lean X, Y, Z. And it's like, we don't lean anywhere. We just are being true to ourselves. If the parks do something and we call it out, it's only because we're a fan. And Dave, I mean, you're at the point now where you've been involved in so many integral things at the company. And I say at the company because, you've spent decades working there. You've spent your life working there at Disney, and so many other of our guests have, but you've earned that ability to kind of critique and be able to add to the conversation, your voice to a conversation that our listeners are actively involved in. They listen to us, they interact with us, and how else are you going to be?
Listen, we just call it as we see it.
Exactly. You know what I love? Live action Scooby-Doo series is a go at Netflix. I feel like some of the coolest things about Scooby-Doo, and I'm a big Scooby-Doo fan, the original Scooby-Doo series from the 60s and 70s. I love it. I think it's super cool, and I think it's prime and ready for a comeback. I love the Scooby-Doo movies, actually. I really enjoyed it because I think at the heart of those films is what captivated me when I was a child growing up and watching it, is that they have a reverence for the source material. So Greg Berlanti, one of the prolific producers of TV, known to man. If you've watched TV, you're familiar with Greg Berlanti's work. He's executive producer for the show, which puts a new spin on the Mystery Inc. gang's origin story. I'm super stoked about this. Dave, what do you think about this?
I've always been a fan of Scooby-Doo, from the original Hanna-Barbera series that was on, animated series. So all I would say about this is I'm sure it's going to be done well, the live action. I just hope if they're going to do Scooby as an animated character, that it's done really well.
Yeah.
That's all I was going to say. I mean, I'll watch this when it comes out, but I really hope that I don't know how they're handling it. If Scoob is going to be a CGI character in the series, or how they're going to do this, but I hope they do it well, and I hope it's fun.
Apparently, they've been working at this for over a year. So I think it's been in development, and I can't wait. I really can't wait. A lot of people didn't like Velma. That series. I looked at watching it, but I just never got a chance to just hit play on it. And, so we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful. I think Scooby-Doo is a great series. Let's go into, is it time? Nope. Is it time?
Your attention.
Oh my gosh, Dave, I totally flubbed the ending of this.
Oh no.
I flubbed the ending.
Obituary roll call.
I talked it up, Dave, and this is what happens. I talked it up, and then I just...
Well, you got it in there.
I got it in there finally, right? All right. So this week, Clive Revel, voice of the Emperor in The Empire Strikes Back, passes away at the age of 94. Recruited to be an actor by Sir Laurence Olivier. He was a member of the Royal Shakespeare Company, earned 2 Tony nominations, and appeared in a pair of Billy Wilder films. Dave, classically trained actor, the original Emperor, of course, ended up getting removed in the remasters for Ian McDermott, who replaced him. But Wow, what a great Shakespearean actor. You talk about Royal Shakespeare Company, only the best of the best are in that. So
exactly. And what's interesting about Obituary Roll Call for this week is all three people we're going to talk about are in their 90s.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. People should be living into their 90s and hundreds,
Yeah.
He had an incredible life and did a lot.
Wow. Yeah. The stage and screen for this character actor, unbelievable. So once again, check it out. Bruce Glover, the villainous Mr. Wint in Diamonds Are Forever, dies at the age of 92. The father of Crispin Glover worked opposite of Bette Davis and Anne Bancroft on Broadway and appeared in Chinatown, Hard Times, and Walking Tall films. You probably know his face for sure. I didn't even make the connection that this actor was actually Crispin Glover's father until I saw Crispin.
And there's a photo in the obituary of the two of them together, and you go, oh, yeah, they're father, son.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. But once again, he's been in a ton of stuff, Dave. But yes, the James Bond film Diamonds Are Forever is unbelievable. A classic, just like the rest of the films that he starred in. Very cool indeed. Rest in peace. And then here we go. Richard Chamberlain, star of Dr. Kildare, king of the melodramatic miniseries, dies at the age of 90. Once again, a face for TV. He's been in so much stuff.
Shogun and the Thornbirds.
Yep.
And it goes on and on and on. He passed away this past Saturday at the age of 90.
Wowzers.
In Hawaii. He was living in Hawaii.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah. He really, I think, had an amazing film and television career.
Yeah, absolutely. He was in King Solomon's Mines, opposite Sharon Stone, right? And then he was in the Lost City of Gold in '86, and then also was in a 12-hour saga miniseries, Centennial, which aired on NBC in '78 and '79. And he was the first actor to portray Jason Bourne on screen when he starred as Robert Lundham's character in ABC miniseries in 1988. Did you even know that? I had no idea.
I had no idea about that. I really didn't. It must have tanked or something.
I don't know, man. It's so crazy to think. It's like, who's the first one to play Jason Bourne? This guy. Holy smokes.
I'm shocked.
I am shocked as well. The things that you learn from Obituary Roll Call, right? Holy smokes. Okay. Well, very cool. Well, rest in peace, Richard Chamberlain. Wow. What a career in life. We relive all of those moments there for all these fun actors who passed away this week. Now it's time for our main event. Please sit back and relax and check out Ted Thomas back in the hot seat as we talk more about Disney history right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
Let's do it.
Skull Rock Podcast. Interview time.
Well, Aljon, we're back again for week 2 with Ted Thomas. Ted, welcome back to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
It's so I so enjoyed our conversation last week about sort of growing up with the 9 Old Men. Your dad was part of that, but this week I really want to focus on your filmmaking career because you've made some really great documentaries. You've also written a great book or 2 or 3. I don't know. Anyway, but Ted, let's talk about how you got into filmmaking. And I did want to ask you a question because you mentioned this very briefly last week. You said you went off to Japan and you lived in Japan for a little while. What were you doing in Japan?
I think it's in Germany that after you finish your higher education, they have what they call a Wanderjahr, a wandering year. Well, it was sort of my Wanderjahr. But I've had an abiding interest in being a world citizen for a long time.
Sure.
When I was growing up, we hosted an AFS student from Argentina for a year. It's a exchange academic program. at the high school level. So when I was in high school, I applied and I went off to Brazil. And I was in Brazil for a summer. And that gave me the bug that I knew that when I went to college that I would want to do a year abroad program somewhere. And I found a wonderful school at that time, Callison College at the University of the Pacific up in Stockton, that had a graduation requirement of spending an academic year in a non-Western culture. You know,
Wow.
this is the late 1960s, and it was a very progressive idea, a really fantastic idea. So what did that mean? That meant that you were going to go off and study in Asia or Africa for an academic year. And the school had a program set up in India at that time. So I and the sophomore class basically shipped off to campus in India for that academic year. And I made a film about a special independent study I had that year on a music teacher who played veena, which is like a South Indian version of the sitar. Um, and
Is that is it smaller than a sitar?
larger,
Oh, it's
larger.
larger than. Okay.
Yeah,
I knew there was a size difference to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I could go on and on about South Indian music, but the point here is that I made that film, and the school thought I had done a very good job on it, and we discussed the possibility of my finishing up my last year with an independent study come producing a film about a new academic program that they had set up in Japan. So off I went my last term as a college senior and made this film about their program. And then I stayed there for another 2 years. And that's how I ended up being in Japan.
So, what did you do for the 2 years after you graduated?
I At that time, we had a thing called film strips. Film strips were used a lot as a classroom teaching aid. And so I made a couple of film strips, one while I was in Japan. And then I taught English at conversational English at different companies that wanted their mid-level management to speak or their employees to speak better English. And one of my main employers was Wacol Lingerie Company. So every week I would go off and talk with the people there, and we'd love to discuss things like Hermann Hesse and authors and stuff like that. And that gave me enough money that I started another film because I was very interested in what it was like growing up in Japan at that time. This is 1973, 74.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine had been teaching English out in the countryside at the foot of Mount Fuji. And she introduced me to some people there, and I was able to meet a family that had a 10-year-old son who was in the fifth grade and befriended them, and they allowed me to come stay with them and make a film about their daily life and the son going to school.
And what was the name of the film, and what did you do with it when you were completed when it was completed?
That film was called At the Foot of Mount Fuji, and when I came back to the U.S. and started working at Disney again, I would go in weekends and use one of the 16 millimeter upright moviolas and
Yeah.
edit my film. And
Wow.
so edited it on weekends and then found a distributor to put it out to educational distribution. And
Through Disney.
no, not through
No?
Disney, not through Disney. It was too it wasn't their cup of tea. But the interesting thing is that by making that film, that I got to screen it for Jim Alger, who was one of the producers at the studio. And
Yeah.
he was starting a new unit to make nonfiction films to publicize the idea of Epcot. And nobody
Ah,
quite knew what Epcot was going to be yet.
right.
And so he hired me on. He hired Alan Coates, Claude Coates' son on. Sam McKim, the great Sam McKim,
Mhm.
illustrator who worked at WED Imagineering, came over. He was part of the team. Bill Boucher, who had worked on films and also several Disneyland attractions, he was part of the team. And so we were a unit developing films about the future. I think we had 6 or 7 topics about the future, and we spent 2 years developing those. And then there was a problem where we were so far out ahead of the actual building of Epcot. Management couldn't quite decide whether our film should be to sort of preview Epcot or wait and do them and publicize Epcot after it had already been built. So as a result, the unit got disbanded. We all went our different ways, and out of it, I got an uh, introduction to the National Geographic specials, which were being made on the West Coast at that time. So I got in there as an associate producer. Well, actually, before that, I went out to Hong Kong and did some pickup shooting for them for one of their specials. And that gave me enough credibility that they then brought me back like a year later to work on a picture about living treasures of Japan. And
Oh, right up your alley.
well, it was. I mean, well, they had the good sense to hire somebody who had experience in Japan and spoke a little bit of the language and stuff like that.
Now, do you still speak Japanese?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I ended up marrying a woman who's Japanese, and we speak Japanese quite a bit.
So you do use the language at home.
Yeah,
And I'm imagining that that helps you get better at the language, and it allows your wife to speak the language.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
both. And
yeah,
she became my producing partner. I mean, Kuniko Okubo. You'll see her name on a couple of our films, several of our
yeah.
films.
And when you did that Treasures of Japan, did
Mm.
you go back over to Japan for a period of time?
Yeah, I mean, this was back when the National Geographics had a lot of time and budget to play with, and so we were in Japan for 10 weeks. You know, it was a great time to be working for National Geographic because you'd be sent out into the field for anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks to work on one of these films, and then you'd come back to Los Angeles and hand it over to the editing room, and it would be edited there for anywhere from 6 to 8 months.
And I should say to our listeners, this is before Disney owns National
Oh,
Geographic. Way
way,
before,
way,
way
way, way
before
before. This is before there was a National Geographic channel,
Yes, yeah.
and the specials were on PBS and done through the PBS station in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and did they ever release some of those films to theaters as well? Do you
Uh,
recall?
no, unfortunately, they didn't. Some of them were
Yeah,
pretty darn good, though.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
well, most of the people who were working there at the time had come out of the David Wolper. There's another name from the past,
Sure, yeah.
but the David Wolper camp. And then it became a PBS thing, WQED West. We all worked for, we were all freelancers for. Anyway, I worked on geographics for a number of years and finally worked my way up to writing and producing, directing one of my own. And I had also continued to keep a relationship going with Disney, and I was brought back to do some filmmaking for Tokyo Disneyland, both multi-screen stuff and a couple of the attractions.
Yeah, I mean, again, right up your alley.
Mm.
Yeah. What was the name of that first film you said you did for them that you produced, directed, and wrote?
Oh, it was on grizzly bears, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
called The Grizzlies, and came out in 86, 87, 87. Came out in 87, so we made it in 86.
Wow.
Um, but the whole idea behind that was um, that there are two dominant species in North America who are very well matched with each other. They're both aggressive, they can live anywhere, they can eat anything, and they were pretty much evenly matched until one of the species developed superior technology. And, the human beings got the technology and the bears got shrinking territory from then on.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting way to sort of tell an anthropological story,
Yeah.
if you will. And the film did very well. Yeah,
And then from there, you said you went to Disney and you did some stuff for Tokyo Disneyland.
right.
And what about El Grupo? When did El Grupo come in? That was much later on, but
Much later on, because around this time, Kuniko, my wife, had been producing commercials, and I had been working on National Geographic, and we never saw each other,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know. So we finally decided, well, let whatever we do, let's try and do it together. So it took me several years to get the project off the ground, but that was when we made our film Frank and Ollie.
right,
Because uh, my father, Frank, and his best friend, Ollie, they had been away from the studio long enough and they had begun writing their own books on animation, such that I really began to feel that what they had been part of and who they were and the way they approached life and art was quite remarkable and deserving of a film, you know.
and you mentioned they wrote, about animation. I mean, let's really tell it like it is. They wrote the Bible on Disney animation, The Illusion of Life.
Hmm.
By Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson, which I have a first edition copy of that both Frank and Ollie signed when they came up to Cal Arts.
Oh,
Uh,
wow,
but but
fantastic.
that but even today, Ted, I would argue that The Illusion of Life really is the foundational book that anybody starting out in animation needs to have. It really is the Bible of animation from the standpoint of Disney full animation.
Yeah. Well, I think it even goes beyond that because I think what they're really talking about is telling you how to communicate an idea to another person.
Right.
That, you know, I was hearing a conversation a while back where a student of animation saying, I'm wondering about whether I should get this book on animation or get The Illusion of Life." And someone who had experience in the field said, well, this other book is a how-to book. The Illusion of Life is a how to think book. There are plenty of examples throughout it. I mean, plenty of images to flip, plenty of drawings to look at and analyze. But above all else, it's about how to conceptually approach the art, how to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, Disney animation's at the pinnacle of the art form.
Yeah.
In fact, it defined the art form as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
And
for so long, nobody else was doing that.
right.
Nobody else was
Yeah.
doing anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you made Frank and Ollie.
Yeah. Made Frank and Ollie, and then went off and did some TV work. Got selected by the Sundance Institute to workshop and develop a dramatic feature film. that unfortunately never quite got off the ground.
Which, by the way, is like the story of Hollywood, where like it seems like 80% of the great projects never really get made.
Right, right.
That it's just, there's so many projects out there that fall to the wayside for so many reasons, and it's kind of a shame.
Well, this wonderful project was one of those that fell by the wayside. But right after that, I was approached by Diane Disney Miller, uh, and this is where the El Grupo story
Yeah.
begins. I was approached by her to do interviews and visual documentation of the museum that she wanted to build in the Presidio. So we got involved
And this is before the museum was actually built.
a decade before, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
long before. Um, so we were in on the ground floor of helping to develop those ideas and filming interviews with important people who she wanted to be, included in that. And then she asked me, she said, Ted, I've got this shoebox that was given to me of snapshots of the South American trip that my mom and dad took in 1941. Um, could you take a look at them and tell me if you think there's a movie here? So I looked at them, and it was fascinating because I recognized some of the people. I recognized my father and Norm Ferguson, Fergie, and Jack Cutting, who I had known, who headed up the foreign department in my early days of working at Disney, and several other people who were Mary Blair, Lee Blair, Herb Ryman, who I'd known, and I thought, and in addition to that, my father had told stories about this South American trip. I think it was a very, very important 10 weeks in his life. He was what, 27, 28 years old when they took the
And
trip.
may probably never left the country before,
No, no,
right?
he hadn't.
Yeah.
I think of that group. The only artist who had was Herb Ryman, and he was a unicorn anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a fantastically talented guy um, who had traveled the world in the 1930s, and so he was well seasoned by that time. Anyway, I said to Diane, yeah, I think there is. Um, it it seems to me that what this really is putting together a jigsaw puzzle of who were these people, what was this, how did the trip affect them, how did they affect the people that they met, and so I wrote up a treatment. The way I normally work is by writing a treatment of an idea, and
Yeah.
then if that snowballs, then you go out and do research and refine that treatment, and then you go out and shoot. This is for my nonfiction projects also, that before I actually make them, I have a pretty good idea of what the story is that I want to tell, because yeah, in documentary, there's all sorts of discoveries you make along the way, but unless you know the story you think you want to tell starting out, then you're really adrift. You need more direction than that. Anyway, I wrote up the idea and shared it with Diane and heard nothing. Months went by and we worked on other projects. I finally said to Kuniko, I wonder where I missed. I wonder why I'm not getting any feedback from Diane on this. And she said, well, every time we talk to her about it, she mentions how much her parents enjoyed the trip. Do you think that there's enough sense of that? And I reread the thing, and it was full of geopolitics and then war clouds gathering, and you know,
Right. Yeah.
and which is all very true.
Sure.
Uh,
Sure.
but I just refocused my approach a little bit and realized that, yeah, when El Grupo came to town, it really was like the circus arriving,
Yeah.
because this is like 4 years after Snow White came out. And Walt is really a global sensation of the creator of a brand new art form.
He's a global celebrity,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean, he's up there with, Salvador Dali and, these world-renowned artists.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So anyway, on the basis of that, we got a green light after green light, and we went ahead and made the film. And it's something that has always,
Well, hold on.
yeah.
I want to step back here because you redid the treatment and resent it to Diane, or how
Yeah,
did you get that
yeah.
going again?
Well, I had a phone call where I said, I've been thinking about that film project, that South American project, and I've had some new ideas. Would you mind if I shared those with you? And she said, well, sure, sure, of course. Another thing we did is I made it much more visual.
Yeah,
I sold the treatment with uh, like you were flipping through National Geographic, so it was very much image driven,
yeah,
and by that time when we started casting the thing of finding the descendants of people in South America who were there, who had interacted with El Grupo, then I was able to flesh this out. And a favorite moment was when I told Diane, and I want to have letter readings by the children of El Grupo, and Diane said, well, can I be in it? I'm a child of El Grupo too. I'm one of the kids.
that's awesome.
And so I thought, yes, yes. I mean, that's once again, I didn't have the first generation any longer to tell the story, but I had the kids. So that's what I was going to run with.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew that I had the descendants and I had a whole bunch of ephemera and I had
The shoebox of photographs.
which was like a jigsaw puzzle. So
Yeah,
we're going to try and revisit as many of those places. And actually, that's what gave me the idea of doing the montages of the then and now, you
yeah,
know.
sure.
Yeah.
And that to me was a period where I think the real fans were aware of that South American trip and what came out of it, but they weren't fully immersed into it and being able to see all those visuals because a lot of those photos were personal photographs
Yeah. Yeah.
taken by the people who were on the trip, taken by press that were in those countries and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So to be able to pull all of that material together really gives almost a day by day, a snapshot, if you will, of the entire trip.
Yeah. Yeah. And another exciting thing to me was that uh, even though Walt had growing celebrity, this was probably the last time that he could take a trip as Walt Disney, just Walt the guy, without being on the red carpet continuously,
Yeah, yeah,
And so as a consequence, there are a lot of photographs during the trip that are very candid and very casual, and I think very revealing of the man's personality.
he was having fun.
Yeah. Well,
You know, he
yeah.
right.
He was having fun and he was doing what he really enjoyed the most, which was brainstorming with a small group of people. I mean, I really think Walt played the game "What if" better than about anybody else in the 20th century. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if such and such happened?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and the mini studio that he took with him to Latin America were all like-minded in that way, so that they could really take an idea and develop it and run with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean it does seem like uh, this trip was also orchestrated to happen because there was the strike brewing at the studio, and Walt was under a tremendous amount of pressure. And it was a stressful situation. It was a chance for him to get out of town and leave the negotiations, if you will, to his brother.
Right, right. I mean, Walt was far too personally invested in the whole strike to take a step back, take a deep breath, and figure out, well, how can it be resolved? I mean, nothing was objective anymore. Everything was personalized,
Well, he
and
was he was wounded. He was wounded by the strike. He felt that people had turned on him, and he
yeah.
was hurt. He was hurt by it.
Well, you know, he had spent a heck of a lot of money in building what was a dream place to make films. I mean,
Yeah,
even down to the minutia of windowsills were at the ideal height for sun to come in and illuminate the drawing table, you know,
yeah.
things like that. And I think it was not, he was not only wounded emotionally, but the fact that World War II had completely cut off their cash flow from Europe, which they depended on very heavily,
Well, I mean, it amounted to at least at least a third of the studio revenue.
if
That
not
that
half,
yeah,
if
that
not half.
hurt. That
Yeah.
hurt. Yeah, without
And,
question. And just so our listeners know, the war started in Europe in 1939. It's September of 1939 when the Nazis rolled into Poland. And it wasn't until December of 41 that the U.S. actually got involved in the war. So you had that essentially about a 3 year period where they lost 30, 40, like you said, maybe even half their studio revenue. And that really hurt.
yeah, yeah, terrifically so. And so by the time the South American trip came about, uh, the studio was out of money. Walt couldn't make feature films anymore. Believe it or not, Pinocchio had not been a success.
Well, yeah,
Fantasia.
but I again, I'm going to argue this point about Pinocchio because to me, Pinocchio is the masterpiece of that time period, in my mind.
In hindsight, in
It,
hindsight, but
yes,
when it was released, it failed to get its audience.
yes, but I think it also failed to partially because of the European market being cut
Yeah,
off.
that's why.
So when you sit there and say it wasn't as financially successful, well, if the war wasn't raging in Europe and he had the revenue from Europe, I think the movie would have performed reasonably well.
Right. Well,
You know,
we should probably rephrase that and say the picture did not do well largely because there was a war.
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
But the point is that because of that, Walt was cash starved, you know, and he went from sitting on a lot of money after Snow White to owing the bank a terrific amount of money, and
yeah,
he was stymied creatively also. So when the opportunity came to do this combo goodwill tour filmmaking research trip to Latin America, it was something of a lifeline, both financially and especially creatively.
yeah,
Because something I've been very strong on is the extent to which Walt got his creative groove back during this 10-week long trip.
yeah,
You know, the Walt Disney that left Burbank in August was a guy who was up against a wall. The Walt Disney who came back in October was once again full of ideas and thinking about possibilities.
And excited about life and excited about the studio and what they could do.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
much so.
Yeah. And I think, the one thing about that period that I've always been fascinated about was, when the war broke out in Europe and the revenue was being choked off, Walt didn't, gnash his teeth and give up. He pivoted. He started thinking outside the box. What if we did educational or training films? And he does the 4 methods of flush riveting for Lockheed, which becomes sort of this catalyst to start doing these training films and other government work that was more educational, with the idea that it was at cost. It was to keep the lights on and the doors open at the studio. And that's
Right.
largely what kept the place going during the war years.
Right. Very much so.
But he was, and I think back to 1928 when he lost the Oswald contract, to Mintz. And he could have been the guy that went to the bar and sat at the end of the bar, just telling everybody who'd listen that he got screwed over. But he didn't do that. He took it as a life lesson that said, you know what, going forward, I'm going to own my own characters, and he creates Mickey Mouse with Byworks.
Well, I don't know if your listeners have gotten the chance to see Walt El Grupo, but if they have, or if they are going to, the very last comment that I have Walt make in the film is reminiscing about, this was probably the most difficult time in his life, but it's a good thing because sometimes things blow up and then you pick up the pieces and something comes out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. By the way, speaking of, where can people see El Grupo? Is that available on any of the streaming services?
Yeah, it is.
i.e. Disney Plus?
i.e. Disney Plus. It is playing on Disney Plus. In fact, both of the films, Walt and El Grupo and Frank and Ollie, are available to stream on Disney Plus.
That's fantastic. That's great, and I would highly recommend people check those out because prior to these streaming services, I mean, you'd have to try and find a DVD or buy a DVD of it, right? And so I think that's amazing. So what? So you did the El Grupo movie. What sparked the idea of doing the book? Because you guys just came out with the book, and my copy is here someplace, but can you tell our listeners the full title of the book?
Yeah, Walt Disney and El Grupo in Latin America. And it's published by the Hyperion Historical Alliance Press, and it's available either on Amazon or directly through Stuart Ng,
Yes.
StuartNGBooks.com.
And you're one of the authors along with Didier Gaz and J.B. Kaufman.
Right.
Yeah.
All three of us have known each other since when JB did a great book called South of the Border with Disney. At the same time, I was doing the film Walt and El Grupo.
Yeah.
And we knew Didier at that time, who was born and grew up in France, but has worked and lived in Brazil and Argentina, and is a superb Disney historian. Well, long and short, there was a thing called the COVID pandemic a few years ago.
Yes.
And I was living in Japan at that time, and get a video call from JB saying, Ted, we can't get into archives, we can't do any research. I have all this material that I put together from my writing. you have all these photographs you put together. What if we revisit the El Grupo trip? And I thought this is a brilliant idea because even though I used many, many photographs in the Walt El Grupo film, there were so many more that,
And it's almost impossible to use all the material in a film,
yeah,
whereas you can do it in a book.
right. And the other thing that really appealed to me, trying to put it into book form, was this idea of being able to flip forward and backwards, you know,
Yeah.
revisit material. And um, along with DDA, we came up with an idea of wouldn't it be terrific if we can give a feeling of you are there by retracing the trip on a day-by-day basis. And for the first time, also sync up all the photographs so we know where they are taken and what day they were taken on, and put that together with a diary excerpt or a letter or a news account or the official itinerary that they were following. And then when we got into the design phase, Steve Reeser, who's a great book designer, um, he and I were talking, and he said, "Well, Ted, do you have any maps or anything like that?" And I said, "Well, we have a couple, but why don't you make them, Steve, so we know where we are,
And
you know?"
and you have a design thread through the book
Yeah,
of the same style map.
yeah,
Yeah.
right,
So
right, yeah,
that's awesome. I will say it is an absolutely stunning book. It was just absolutely beautiful, and to see a lot of photos that really hadn't been seen before.
yeah, right.
That I thought that was just hugely important, and I know you all did your due diligence in finding some of that material, because I know some of that surfaced down in Brazil and other countries while you were doing the book. There were finds.
There definitely finds, and not only that, but the ability to ID some of the additional people who were in photos, where we might know who the Disney folks were, and we might know who one of the Brazilians was, but then who are those other two people, you
Yeah.
know? Or there's a great photo that was taken at a film studio in Argentina, and we couldn't figure out who these two actors were who were toasting Walt and several other people. And through the costume that one of the actors was wearing, I was able to contact some film buffs in Argentina who said, "Oh, well, that movie came out in 1942 and it was called such and such, and here was the cast. And don't you know that in this still, here's a guy who's wearing that same costume, and oh, he did the voice for the ringmaster in Dumbo, you know?" So suddenly you realize, oh, okay, so this connects to when they were recording the Spanish language soundtrack for Dumbo in
Wow.
Argentina at the same time they were doing the trip. So this is
Wow.
one of those, pick up a rock, look at, moments.
That to me is the exciting part about doing the research in a book
Mm,
is when you stumble across something and it leads you to something else, and you discover something else after that. It's just it's that detective work of finding all those crumbs that lead you to different things and help you put the full story together.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and you know this so well yourself with the great books you've been. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the fun part about putting the books together
Mm.
is doing that kind of research. What's next for you, Ted?
Well, for several years, I've been wanting to um, do a biography on my father, and that's
Mhm.
something that I'm working on. And
Awesome.
it's a combination of sort of my own memoir and and his biography. Because two questions I get asked again and again was what was Frank like and what was it like growing up with him? So when I get it done, this is my attempt to do that. you know.
Do you ever get sick of those questions? Do you ever feel like I'm a filmmaker, it's not all about my father?
Yeah, well, fortunately, I got to know my father well enough as a fellow human being so that, yeah, he was my father, but he was also a fellow artist, a fellow musician, a fellow traveler on this earth.
Yeah,
And um having that sort of relationship with him, I've also come to feel that um, he and his accomplishments and the people he lived and worked with were part of a really remarkable time. I think it's as extraordinary as the Italian Renaissance was,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
I
and
agree. Yeah,
and so I I don't think I don't tire of telling stories about any of that because I realize also that I'm one of the last links to it. I
yeah,
mean, after my generation, it will be through the efforts of you know, people doing a lot of reading and um trying to connect dots.
yeah, yeah,
And the pleasure about having a conversation like this is that I grew up with some of these people, or knew them, or
yeah.
knew what my father said about them.
And you know something, when we started this interview, when we did the first part last week, I wanted to kind of get that out of the way because look, it's your life. It was part of your life. Your dad was this amazing animator, this legendary Disney animator, but you are your own person, and you have become a filmmaker and an author, and you've done all these great things yourself. Your dad shouldn't overshadow that. So, in my mind, it's, you celebrate your dad, but we spent this entire episode talking about your career and
Right.
all the accomplishments you have. And I'm thrilled actually to hear that you're writing a memoir on your father, but sort of, through your eyes, growing up in that world, and putting that down on paper as a historic record,
Mm.
which I think is so important. It really is, that these things get documented and
Mm.
not just shoved to the side. I mean, honestly, it's important for the future generations to understand, an artist like Frank Thomas or Ollie Johnson or Ward, to have that information out there that people can go back in and not only read and enjoy, but reference for other research.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. I mean, uh, they're always, well, my desire is that they always be an inspiration to people.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
good for a laugh also.
Well, something that comes with it, right? But
Yeah.
when do you think you'd have that book done?
Well, I took this little detour because I got burned out of our house, but I hope to get back to
I
it soon.
and speaking of which, I hope you didn't lose too much material.
My wife teased me that when we packed up, we had only about an hour to pack up the car, and everything I took was Disney art related.
Yeah, yeah. Well, something, good on you, because there were other people that we both know who lost complete collections of
Right,
stuff.
right,
And Altadena, it wasn't just Disney stuff that was lost. I mean, there was a Latino archive that was lost.
right.
Really valuable, important things that can't be replaced.
No, no.
So I'm thrilled that you were able to take a lot of stuff out of your house, and I'm also equally thrilled that your house is still standing.
Right,
So, you
right.
know, even if it'll be 12 months before you're back in, so,
Right.
but such is life, right?
Mm.
Well, Ted, I just can't thank you enough for being on the Skull Rock podcast. And you're a repeat guest because we had you on last year to talk about your El Grupo book. And I'm curious, is there any other book associated with that trip? That's I had heard some rumblings about the Central America trip, secondary trip that they did.
DDA has been taking the lead on this of doing a sequel to the Walt and El Grupo in Latin America book because there were subsequent trips in 42, 43 related to Three Caballeros.
Yep.
So they went back to Mexico several times and then also to Cuba because there was going to be a third film in that series and they haven't came up with a fourth Caballero from Cuba who was going to join the other three. But the war ended and that film never got made.
Yeah. Well, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the Skull Rock podcast again. I hope we're going to have you back again in the future, especially when you get this Frank Thomas, Ted Thomas memoir done. That'll be fantastic. But thank you so much for being on the Skull Rock podcast, Ted.
Thank you, Dave, and I look forward to being a repeat offender.
We always love the repeat offenders here at the Skull Rock podcast. All right, we'll see you soon, okay?
All right, bye for now.
Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by the generosity of the following companies. The Old Mill Press, publishing beautifully crafted books that illuminate our world. To learn more, visit theoldmillpress.com. And by listeners like you.
Hi, this is fifth grade teacher Heidi Levine, and you're listening to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Oh, you know that sound. It's time now for Kristen's weekly Disney travel deal. Kristen, you've got some awesome deals for this year. Let's talk about them.
Everybody's favorite travel deal, the free dining plan deal, is returned. You will be able to get a non-discounted 4-night, 4-day, or longer package that will include, of course, your room at a Disney Resort hotel and a ticket with the park hopper option. This is going to be valid for select dates from June 29th through December 22nd.
Book your next Disney trip, Universal trip, or any cruise line, Adventures by Disney as well, with Kristen. And where is the best place they can email you so they can start getting their vacation sorted?
They can contact me at themeparksandcruises@gmail.com.